So let me ask, how many of you guys know what that tree is? Does anybody know my story? Oh, I know the teachers are familiar. Little girl in the pink, how are you familiar with my project? The young lady in the pink.
This test told us.
Okay. Well, did anybody discover my project outside of your teachers sharing the story with you? No?
Anybody see it in the paper?
No.
Really? Oh, you guys need to read more newspapers. There we go. Well, so anyways, I'll give you a little background about myself. Professionally, I'm a newspaper photographer. I'm a photojournalist. And then the other thing I do is corporate and commercial photography. Oh, is it freaking out on me? Yep, there we go. So I've been at photography for 25 years, guys. That's a long time. Anybody want to take a guess at how old I am? I'm serious too, because I'm going to talk about perception and perspectives. And go ahead.
39.
Oh, I like you. Black t-shirt.
49.
I'm getting closer. Young man?
56.
Oh, all right, I'm going with this little girl.
52.
Yay! The crowd roars. Yes, I'm 52 years old.
You look younger than that.
Oh, thank you very much. That is extremely nice of you to say. You'd think you were looking for a job. Well, guys, so anyways, I'm going to talk about perspectives today and perceptions, because I don't necessarily behave like a guy who's 52 years old sometimes. And as I talk about my project, I'll relate to you how my attitude has changed and my perspectives on life and how I behave and what I do, and it'll translate, you'll understand how the project impacted me. So I spent 25 years as a traditional photojournalist working at newspapers. Now I'll just kind of scroll through a selection of photos here that show you what I've done. I worked at newspapers until 2006, and since that time, I'm what's called a freelance photographer. So I work for different newspapers, different magazines, different companies. Companies hire me to take pictures for advertising. Yesterday, I got a call from the Milwaukee Journal because there was a really sad news situation in southwest Wisconsin. They wanted me to go and photograph for them for the newspaper. I do a lot of stories on agriculture, and I'm in a perfect area for doing a story on agriculture, don't you think?
Yeah.
Now, we're all familiar with these windmills, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I shot a project on the Montfort windmills for a company that develops wind sites. And of course, I'll go back to that picture. The thing I'm always looking for, guys, even as a photojournalist, I want to come up with a picture that doesn't look like what you would see if you drove by this situation or you were at the same place as I was. Because I want the world to look different to you than what you would see when you're walking down the street. Why would I want things to look different than what you would see normally? Anybody? Go ahead. Yes, because I want to capture their attention and their interest. Very good. So if I took a predictable picture, it wouldn't be interesting, it wouldn't capture their interest. So I'm always looking for different perspectives. And when that Holstein came over and got nosy with me, I could have kissed her. It's like, thank you very much. It definitely made it a more interesting picture. And even this, you know, it's just a lonely grove of trees, and that workhorse walked over there underneath of it, and it kind of made my day. And then I do lots of stories and pictures of people and places. Another wind farm that is at Montfort, it was another one that I shot for that project. Then in 2006, I left the newspaper industry and I branched out and I went out on my own, and I started shooting for companies like the Associated Press, Getty Images, Bloomberg News, Wire Image. Do you guys know what those companies are? Do you know what they do? Anybody? They're like a local news organization, but when I'm shooting for those organizations, my pictures can run anywhere in the world. They can run in Time Magazine, they can run in the New York Times, they can run in the newspapers in Great Britain, they can run in newspapers in China. So it's really kind of cool, it's really exciting. My pictures are seeing the world around. This, of course, was in Iowa, the presidential campaign. Brewers, any Brewer fans in here? A lot of Brewer fans, good. I have not shot any Brewer games yet this year, but the last 2 years I probably shot a dozen games each year, and those are for Getty Images also. And they run in all the major newspapers, major magazines. It's kind of exciting. But what people don't realize is that when a photographer is shooting an assignment like that, it's hard to call it fun. It's kind of like, you know, you guys are assigned to do homework for your teachers. Is that fun?
No.
No.
Well, how about if you sit down to read a book that you're really interested in? Is that fun? So it's kind of like that. When I'm covering a game for a publication, they're paying me, I'm working. But if I pull my camera out and I want to take a walk in the woods and make pictures for me, that's fun. So, I call my That Tree project my unintended adventure. And the reason I call it my unintended adventure is because it all started because I bought an iPhone, which is pretty crazy. I'm going to quick talk a little bit about oak trees and the subject of my project. This is a really interesting photo that a friend of mine took. He came out one day to take pictures of me taking a picture of the tree. And it was really fun for me because when I started this project, I'd be out there all alone, and there was nobody there but me and that tree. And I had no idea how small I was in contrast to that grand old bur oak. It's an incredible tree. Do any of you know what a witness tree is? Anybody know what a witness tree
I
is?
think I can take a while.
Go ahead.
A tree that is there when someone dies and gets
Well, you're on the right track. It all has to do with someone seeing it. And when the European settlers came to the United States and they started migrating from the East Coast to the West Coast, they came to the Midwest, and in the early 1800s, the Federal Land Survey sent surveyors out to survey the land and map it off so that they could designate ownership of property. So when these surveyors came through, other than the Native Americans and the wildlife, there were no people. I mean, the United States wasn't settled. So they started making their way through, surveying the property, and they would use points of reference. And because of where we are, it was a prairie and oak savannas. It wasn't real heavily forested like some of the big hardwood forests around here. And so as points of reference, when these guys were surveying the land, they would use oak trees as points of reference, and they'd paint a blaze on them where they'd chop them with a hatchet and create a scar on the bark. And then that tree was a reference point that they used when they were measuring to designate the locations of different pieces of property that would eventually be owned by people. So a witness tree would be a tree that was on the prairie when those original Federal Land Survey guys came through in the 1830s. And an oak savanna, do you guys know what an oak savanna is? Anybody know what an oak savanna is? Go ahead.
It's a prairie and has trees scattered all over.
Yes, yes, and an oak savanna is part of the prairie. It's a real loose population of forest. Bur oak trees, black oak trees, and then lots of prairie grasses. We don't have much of that anymore. Why don't we have many prairie and oak savannas anymore, guys? Anybody know? Go ahead.
Farming?
Farming, exactly. And we need farming, we need agriculture. It's how we survive. But unfortunately, the consequence of agriculture is that we've lost a really unique part of our ecosystem. Does anybody know why they call it a bur oak? Do you know what that is in the picture? Go ahead. Pardon me? Well, what part of what actually was in those before? Yep, the acorns. And the reason they call it a bur oak is because of it looks like eyelashes. The furry fringe on the shell of the acorn. And so then you guys understand how the bur oak and the prairie and how the oak savannas remained oak savannas and didn't get heavily forested? Anybody? It's kind of up there. Go ahead and answer. Go ahead.
When they burned the prairies.
I can't hear you. You have to speak up.
When they burned the prairies?
Yes, yes. And either lightning started the fires on the prairie, or early on the Native Americans started the fires on the prairie, because they wanted those vast stretches of grassland. And oak trees have a really unique quality to them, that they're relatively impervious to fire. And therefore, they were the only trees that survived on the oak savannas and on the prairie. What about the root system on a bur oak? And even prairie grasses. What is it about prairie grasses that makes them survive? Go ahead.
Long roots.
Very long root system. Very long root system. And the oak trees in the oak savanna also have a very long root system. And the unique thing is there is as much growth in roots as there is in canopy of the tree above. And the reason that oak savannas grow the way they are, guys, is because they have a heavy demand for water. And the distance between the oaks and an oak savanna are determined by the root system of the tree. So my tree, think about this. Think about how old you think it is, and I'll show you how we made a determination. So in December, I was going to be in an article in a magazine, and the gentleman that was writing the article asked me, Mark, how old is that tree? He asked me all kinds of questions. How old is the tree? What year was it surveyed? Who was the first owner of the property? Historically, who owned it until I started doing the project? Well, I had no idea. So he gave me homework. So as a result of his homework, I went to the Register of Deeds at my county seat, and I started looking through vast journals of information. And I learned some really interesting things about that tree. But the one thing I couldn't learn by looking through those journals was how old it was. So I connected with a gentleman named Evan Larson. He's a geologist at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and Evan's field of study is oak trees. He's done studies all around the world on the age of oak trees and on oak savannas and on those barely surviving oak savannas that even exist in our midst. When I was driving over here today, I noticed a couple spots between here and Arthur where there actually are borderline oak savannas. They don't have prairie grasses in them anymore, but they have a pasture. But because the farmer has not tilled the soil, there's still a remnant of an oak savanna. So Evan came out in December on a really cold day. I don't know if you can see the tool he's got there, but it's like a T, and it's a hollow drill bit. And he just drills that in as far as it will go into the tree. And then when he gets done, he extracts it. Inside there's a probe, and he pulls the probe out, and with the probe comes the core sample that he took of the tree. Now how do you think he uses that core sample to determine how old the tree is? Go ahead. Exactly. He counts the rings. Counts the rings. And it's real interesting because when he pulls that core sample out, it's really hard to differentiate between different rings of the tree. So what he does is he takes it back to the lab, he adheres it to a base plate, and then he just sands it real fine and just keeps sanding it till it looks like a fine piece of furniture, and then he can count the rings on the tree. Now when he did the core sample, he did discover that the tree is hollow. But the first thing he said to me is, oh, don't worry, it's a very healthy tree. Now on trees, the most important feature on the tree as far as its survival and health is the bark. So if the bark is healthy, typically the tree is healthy. Now based on the core sample that he took, he was able to make a determination on how old the tree was. Let's put it up for a guess. How old do you guys think the tree is? Let's start with you. Ooh, that's a nice guess. Girl in green.
157.
Good guess. Go ahead. White t-shirt. Pardon me?
128.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
128.
Nope. The blue.
1 million.
Okay, that's a wild guess. Go ahead.
157.
Oh gosh, we've heard that one before. Higher. Go ahead.
I said
Nope. Lower. I'm going to give up here pretty quick. Oh, teacher, go ahead. Guess.
167?
Oh, she's extremely close. I'm going to divulge the answer, guys. Based on the core sample that he took, because the tree is hollow, the core sample went back to 150 years. But based on the depth of the hollow, his estimate is it's 163 years old, but he said it could be as old as 185 years old. So, unfortunately, it's hollow. He couldn't give me an exact age for the tree. But what was really interesting is that based on those tree rings that he could look at, he could follow it back, and he could pinpoint the date of previous droughts. I told him a story about the farmer in 1950. One of the farmers that owned the property did a bunch of work where they got some federal money and they came in and they fixed the waterway and they terraced the ground around it. And because of that, it inspired a spurt of growth in the tree. Because why would it inspire a spurt of growth in the tree? What would it have caused? Anybody? What would it have gotten more of?
Water.
Exactly, it got more water. Because they broke the sod, a lot more water to percolate down to the roots. Therefore, it was a really healthy growth year for the tree. And so it was really interesting. That's what scientists look at when they're looking at that data. The age and also a track record for weather events. What do you think it's going to look like this last year? What do you think when that tree ring is going to look like compared to other years because of the drought? Go ahead.
Really small.
It's going to be very thin, you're right, a very thin ring. So I'll quick talk about the history of the land, and this is what I learned when I did all that research for the article. I learned that the land was surveyed by a guy named Lucius Lyons. Isn't that a great name? I love it. I mean, I don't know anybody named Lucius, and I certainly don't know anybody with the last name Lyons. He sounds like a kind of a pioneering sort of fellow. So Lucius Lyons came through the Midwest in 1834 to survey the ground. He would travel with a horse and wagon. He would have 3 or 4 guys that worked with him that offered support. They'd carry all of his equipment. All of his surveying gear was very heavy, large, and cumbersome back in that day. So Lucius Lyons surveyed that particular piece of property in 1834. And he wrote a really colorful description. This guy was a really great writer, very inspiring. He drew really interesting pictures as well. And I was able to research all this because the state of Wisconsin has scanned in and digitally archived all of the survey notes from all the federal land surveyors that came through Wisconsin. It's an absolutely incredible record of history. So in 1834, he surveyed the land. In 1839, a gentleman named John Hawkins Roundtree, if you look him up on the internet, do a Google search, you'll find out that he was a real historical leader in his time. The town of Platteville was founded pretty much based on a lead mining claim that John Hawkins Roundtree held. So he officially bought the property in 1839. He owned it and sold it to various people until it was eventually bought by a gentleman named James Vine in 1869. And a member of James Vine's family or a descendant owned that property until 1989. 120 years. That piece of ground was owned by the same family. Pretty incredible. In 1989, the last member of that family passed away and their children decided they didn't want the land anymore. So they sold it to a farmer named Bob Digman. Bob Digman owned it for 2 years and then he sold it to a gentleman named Tim Clare. But when Bob Digman bought the land in 1989, this particular piece of ground where my tree exists had never been farmed. It had never had crops on it. It was just pasture. And all along I've wondered, how is it that that tree didn't get bulldozed in order to make crop ground? And that's why, because it was pasture. Now I asked Bob Digman, how is it that you didn't destroy the tree? And he said, well, there weren't that many trees on the ground. And like me, he looked at it, he thought it was a beautiful tree, and he decided to spare it and let it remain. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and these questions have to do with just understanding and knowledge. So guys, when building a house, what is the carpenter's most important tool? Back here.
Hammer.
Okay, that's a good guess. Anybody else? And this is a trick question, guys, because you really need to think. Way in the back.
Wood.
And that's another good guess. We're talking about material things. Young girl in the pink.
His brain.
Whoa, what did you say?
Their brain.
Yeah, say it a little louder so all these guys hear it.
Their brain.
Yes, their brain. Their brain. Because can a hammer build a house? Not unless you're swinging it. Can wood build a house? Not unless the carpenter's cutting it. So I'll ask you another question. What is the photographer's most important tool? Back here in the blue. Yep.
Camera.
Good guess. In the green. Yes, exactly. Again. My cameras are just an inanimate object. It doesn't know how to see. It doesn't know how to interpret the scene and make an exposure. And the whole reason I bring this up, guys, is that our perception and our perspective is that we lose sight of the fact that we are the most important tool in our toolbox. Every one of you guys, whatever it is you decide to pursue as a career, it doesn't matter how much training you got, it doesn't matter how much technology you've got at your disposal, it doesn't matter how many cool things you've got to help you do your job, you are the absolute most important component of anything you choose to do. Your homework can't do itself. You can have a great computer that lets you do lots of research, but unless your brain is working really well, unless you're really paying attention, you can't do the homework. So wrestle with that. And so last one, for a chef, what is their most important tool? And I'm just going to tell you a story, because people are like, oh, you must have a really good stove, right? You know what? I could have the best stove in the world, but unless I really am a good cook and have a good understanding of food, food's not going to be very good. So my story, guys, we're finally going to get to that tree. I better talk faster. I talk too much. So in January of 2012, I bought an iPhone. And I posted a note on my Facebook page, and I said, oh, I got an iPhone. And I have a friend who's a professional photographer in Minneapolis, and she sent me a note, sent me a text, and the text was, isn't the camera great? And I laughed at her. And the text reply I sent was, really? Because as a photographer, I've got every imaginable tool I could need to help me shoot a spot in a situation, to shoot a feature photo, to cover a Brewers game. Why on earth would I turn to my iPhone to take pictures? Little did I know that it would be a great revelation when I started to turn to my iPhone to take pictures. So I'm driving home that day, pondering what my friend Corey had said to me. I live 6 miles from town. I've been driving by my tree for 20 years. In 20 years, how many pictures do you guys think I've taken of that tree? Go ahead, teacher, back in the back.
0.
Yes, he's holding up a 0. Exactly. Isn't that a shame? That is a beautiful tree. I'm constantly capturing pictures of beautiful things, but I just didn't even give that tree a second glance. I looked at it, thought, oh, that's a beautiful tree, and I just kept right on going. So it was snowing to beat the band that day. I'm wearing these very dress shoes. I turned the corner, and I looked down there at that tree, and I thought about my friend's challenge to me, and I parked my pickup truck. And I ran through the snow, slipping and sliding down to the tree, pulled my iPhone out of my pocket, figured out how to turn on the camera application, and then I made a half a dozen pictures. And I wasn't dressed for it, I was cold, ran back to my truck, and I drove home. Then I'm like, oh geez, how do I get these pictures off my phone onto my computer? So you know what I did, because I didn't know how to use the technology? I emailed them to myself. I was able to email them. So I emailed them, and the picture came up on my computer, and guys, I bought the first digital camera when I was at the newspaper. I was a photo editor at one point in time. In 1996, they came up with the first digital cameras that newspaper photographers used. That camera cost, hold on to your pants, guys, $16,000. That's a lot of coin. $16,000. Can you guys imagine? That's pretty much about the cost of not a very expensive new car. And we were paying that much for a camera for a photographer to shoot news with. What do you think my iPhone cost me? Girl in the pink.
$5,000.
Oh, no, that's... Go ahead. Yeah. 200, yep. Now it's worth about 400, but I get a discount because I'm beholden to my cell service provider. But I spent $200 on this. The cameras that I was buying for the newspaper were $16,000. The resolution on those cameras I was using for the newspaper were what's called a 2-megapixel camera. My iPhone is an 8-megapixel camera. Holy cow. 4 times, four times the resolution. Unbelievable. And it's in a little package in my pocket. So this is the first picture I made of the tree. And based on that experience, guys, I didn't talk about this. So when something becomes a job, we don't do it for fun anymore. When I first got into photography as a college student, I got into it because it was exciting. It was a new adventure. I didn't know how to use a camera. But once I started doing it as my livelihood, getting paid to do it every day, I stopped taking pictures for me just as a point of enjoyment. So based on my friend's challenge and my amazing discovery of how good a camera my iPhone was, I decided every day I would take and post a photo, whatever inspired me, and I'd post it on my Facebook page. So I did this for almost 2 months. March 13th, I'm driving home from an assignment in Platteville, and I hadn't posted a photo yet that day, and I'm looking at the sun, this beautiful sunset, and I'm like, oh, I need something between me and that sunset to make a picture of. I was taking the exact same road I had taken on January 20th. I turned the corner onto my township road, and I looked down at that tree, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that tree is in the right spot. So I parked my truck again, I ran the same path I'd done on January 20th, and I made another picture of the tree. And I posted it on my Facebook page. And it kind of resided there for, another 10 days or so. And on March 23rd, a good friend of mine from Seattle, he finally saw the picture. On March 13th he saw it, or March 23rd he saw it. He sends me a note on my Facebook page and he says, this is kind of funny, dude, what's with you and that tree? You have to do a picture a day with it. So March 24th, I responded and I officially started my project. So I'm just going to scroll through these pictures and just kind of talk about a few of them. I'm not going to show you all 365 days because it would take us forever. It's already taking too long, I'm afraid. So this picture, it was one of those days I got too busy. I have a regular job making pictures for a living, so I have to find time in my day to make a trip out there to make a picture of the tree. It was almost sunset and I still hadn't made a photo. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I normally walk down to the tree, but this particular day I drove my truck down, and the tree is on the top of a hill, and I parked my truck at the base of the hill, and I turned it up towards the tree, and I turned on my headlights. And then I went out on the opposite side of the tree in the field, and I laid down on the ground, and this is the picture I made. And the reason I want you to think about this is the tree, the project, the challenge, seeing the same thing every day, it forced me to be creative and clever and try and come up with new and fresh perspectives. This is a picture I took on April 1st, and I love it because early on in the project, every day I would go out there and the blackbirds, you guys know how red-winged blackbirds are, they make lots of noise. If you ride by them on your bike on the road or if they're out in the farmyard, they like to squawk and dive bomb you and make lots of noise. And the blackbirds drove me crazy for the first month of my project. But I was there every day. So eventually, at some point in time, I became part of the landscape, and I'll just jump ahead. 2 days before I took the last picture for my project, I was out there all alone at sunrise. The sun came up, I made a beautiful picture, and a blackbird flew in and he landed on the weeds beside me. And at the start of my project, that blackbird would have landed beside me and he'd have been squawking up a storm, but that blackbird was so comfortable with me that he flew in and he was singing his song, his serenade wake, welcoming in the sunrise. I mean, it was absolutely a wonderful experience and an amazing contrast. I'd become part of that realm, part of that environment. This was a real cool experience, and guys, it's all about experiences and taking note of things that happen every day. You know, we get so comfortable, we're always in such a big hurry, but because of this project, it forced me to slow down and take note of things that I hadn't noticed in the past. To a photographer, the most important thing is quality of light, because the quality of light is what dictates how my pictures look. And the morning I shot this, I was out there before sunrise, sitting there waiting for the sun to come up. And as the sun came up, it hits the top of the tree, and I waited until it slowly paints its way to the bottom of the tree, and I made that picture just before there's any sunlight on the grass. Then I started looking at things a little more closely, and I discovered this little spider. That spider is no bigger than a dime. And then, you know, after 2 weeks, everything kind of started looking the same. You know, it all started looking the same. So I decided, you know what, I need to venture out. So instead of staying close to the tree, I walked 400 yards beyond the tree. And what an incredible discovery. Can you imagine how long that skull has been hanging on that fence post with all that lichen and moss growing on it?
What's our mic?
Well,
Lichen.
another one of those beautiful mornings. It's a foggy morning. People say never look back. That's kind of one of those silly statements that people make. But as a photojournalist and a photographer, I'm always looking back. I'm always second guessing. Did I get the best picture I could get? The day I shot this, I had spent an hour down there in the fog, wandering around, making all kinds of cool pictures. And I'm walking back to my truck, and I turn around just to take one last glance. And as I'm there taking one last glance, I see a blackbird flying across the valley, and I quick pull out my iPhone and made 2 or 3 frames. And it was the picture of the day, because as a photographer, we're always looking for things that are called moments. Now, I'm photographing a tree. Does much happen with the tree? Does it move? Not really, it doesn't do much. So I was at the mercy of something as simple as a blackbird flying through the scene. So I'm going to talk about perceptions again and perspectives. So for years, guys, I thought, because if you ask me what I do for a living or what I am, I would say, oh, I'm just a photographer. Why on earth would I say I'm just a photographer? Do you think you guys might say something like that, you know? I think at some point in time you probably will. You guys are kids, you still have a fresh perspective on the world, but for me, I consider myself just a photographer. And the more time I spent photographing this tree, the more time I spent expanding my horizons, expanding my perspectives, seeing the world in a different way, you know what it made me realize? Because most people don't see the world the way that a photographer does. It took a project like this for me to recognize that I'm not just a photographer, that I'm a really lucky guy who's blessed with a different way of seeing the world than most people, and I realize that I'm an artist. Does anybody see a unique feature in that picture? Go ahead. Anybody? Yes, a heart. A heart. And that's just one of those unique discoveries. And if you start looking at things a little bit more freely and with a more relaxed mind, it's amazing what you'll see. This is right after the first corn crop was planted. And that's the cool thing about this project. It's a real wonderful visual record of last year's drought. Windy day. Another record of the birds. Hey guys, be thinking about some of the elements in this project and in these pictures, because I'm going to throw something at you when we get done here. So think about some of these things. And be thinking about questions you might want to ask me. And this was another discovery. I'm wandering around the tree, I'm looking at it. I walked between the tree and the sunset, and wow, I saw my shadow. And I knew I had my picture for that day. So the crazy thing about my iPhone and this whole project is it made me recognize that there are aspects of technology that you guys are much more likely to utilize than a guy who's 52 years old. How many of you have a Facebook page? Almost everybody? Do any of you use Instagram? Still a few of you. How about Twitter? Cool. Anybody use Pinterest? Yeah, see now guys, I knew that the teachers might use Pinterest, but you do too. Now, Pinterest is the one social media that I have not utilized yet, and I really think I should. Pinterest is all about pictures, right? Do you think Pinterest would be a good place for me to showcase my work? That's what people tell me, so I'm going to have to think about that. And then traditional media, which is newspapers, magazines, etc. The day I shot this picture was June 7th, and I'll go back to my discussion about traditional media. So June 7th of 2012, I got a phone call from the gentleman at the Platteville Journal. Do you guys know the Platteville Journal? What's your local paper?
Dodgeville Chronicle.
Oh, the Dodgeville Chronicle. I think they're owned by a different company, but the company that owns the Platteville Journal called me and they wanted to do a story on my project. And I'm like, oh my word. I don't want to friend everybody that wants to see my daily picture. So, you know, being the old guy who's trying to embrace technology, I decided, okay, I need a page, a Facebook page for that tree. So I sat down on the computer, called my twin brother in Milwaukee, and between the two of us, we muddled our way through creating a Facebook page for that tree. So we created the Facebook page for that tree. The day I took this picture, the gentleman from the newspaper interviewed me. The story ran the next day, and he ran a link to the Facebook page for that tree. How many new followers do you think I picked up overnight? Go ahead. Yeah, I wish, that's a big number.
2
To what?
people.
No, no, actually it was 300 people. But overnight, 300 people started funding my project. And it was a clear illustration of why I didn't want to friend everybody that wanted to see my tree photos. But so that's the day that the tree was kind of introduced to the world. You guys understand the concept of when they say something went viral? You guys know what that means, if something goes viral?
Yeah.
So who said yes? Explain it. Go ahead.
Like when everybody watches it and everybody wants to see it and like
Yeah, they just naturally discovered, or a friend shares it, whatever. It was really none of my doing. It just happened. The beauty of social media. I never could have done it through the traditional newspaper. So through that process, people start following my project. The farmer, I don't know if you can see the tractor in this picture, the farmer's baling hay. So I started trying to be proactive, guys. I started thinking about, what am I going to make a picture of? I started seeing things that I thought were inspiring. It was kind of a challenge, kind of like a dairy farmer being hostage to his cattle. I suddenly became hostage to my tree. So I looked for things to help inspire me. And this particular day, my internet had gone out at home, and I'm at the public library transmitting photos to a customer. And it's a drought year. So we didn't have much rain. Weather events, sunrises, sunsets, those were the sort of situations that created opportunities for me to make pictures. The day of this, I left the library and I looked at the sky and I'm like, oh my word, the tree is 6 miles away. I'm like, am I going to get to the tree in time to make a picture? Fortunately, I did. Do you think it rained?
no.
Not a drop. Not a drop. An incredible storm front, made for a wonderful picture, didn't drop a single drop of rain.
I noticed something in the clouds at the,
Oh, what do you notice?
I see a hand.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the cool thing about clouds. They're full of imaginative subjects. So I'm going to quick tell a story about that farmer that owns the property right now. So I had a conversation with him one day, and I said to him, it just amazes me that that tree is still there. And I talked about how the one farmer liked it, and Tim Clare, the current owner, in the spring of 2012, he had a bulldozer operator coming out taking out all his fence rows because he no longer has livestock. He's only raising grain. So the bulldozer is taking out the fence rows, it's smoothing out the waterways, and the day he went to investigate the work, the bulldozer operator says to my friend the farmer, while I'm at it, you want me to push over that tree too? He's telling me the story, it kind of made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I'm like, oh my word, that's how precarious an existence this tree and other trees like it have. And Tim's comment to the bulldozer operator was, that tree's been there for over 200 years, I'm not the guy that's going to push it over. I'd say Tim's kind of an unintentional environmentalist, don't you think? So, perspectives. So the night I took this picture, guys, I'm out there, and a barred owl landed in the tree, but the iPhone does not shoot very well in the dark. And I can't get very close because it doesn't have a telephoto lens. So I saw that barred owl land in the tree, and that visual was only a picture in my mind's eye because I couldn't make a picture of it. And then a nighthawk swooped in. The nighthawk is swooping all around me, and just a wonderful experience, but again, it's too dark for the iPhone to make a picture. And then the fireflies came out. I'm laying there in the grass, looking at that blue sky, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if I can make a picture of it. And I tried it with the traditional iPhone application, but then I discovered an application I had purchased for 99 cents called Slow Shutter app. So I activated it and messed with the settings, and I have my iPhone on a tripod, which is a device that holds it so it doesn't move, kind of like the tripod he's got the video camera on. And the fireflies are flying all around, and I tapped the button on my iPhone, and I'm laying in the grass, and I'm watching, and a firefly flew through the scene, and it was like somebody took a yellow paintbrush and painted a yellow swipe across the picture. Oh my gosh. I literally said an oh my gosh or something, and I'm watching it, and there's more fireflies fly through the scene. It's painting yellow specks and stuff all over. And so here's this 52-year-old guy, guys. I'm out there, I'm like this, I'm herding fireflies. Can you imagine what my neighbors thought? There's a house right across the road from that tree. And I think the next day I realized, you know, I should probably go explain to them what I'm doing. I'm not some crazy old guy hanging out by a tree, running around doing who knows what in the middle of the field. So I explained to them what was going on. But guys, perspectives. How many of your parents do you think you'd see out there herding fireflies? Any of you? Do any of you have parents that would be fun enough to herd fireflies? Because let me tell you, if they don't, they should. You guys would herd fireflies, wouldn't you? Never stop herding fireflies. This was a cool day too. A woman who lives in Colorado brought her children back to Platteville to see their grandparents, and as a result of that, she contacted me and wanted me to take her boys down there to see the tree. What a cool experience. And based on my experience with those two boys, 5 years old and 7 years old, how long do you think it took me to get them from the road to that tree, and why? Any guess? It took forever. You know why? Because every bug, every insect, every ant, they had to stop and analyze it. So what do you think I shot the day after that experience? They impacted me dramatically. They made me realize, holy cow, Mark, you're not looking close enough things. You're not recognizing the little things. It took a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old kid to make me, the professional photographer who's been doing this for 25 years, to realize I need to slow down and appreciate those little simple things. All right, guys, there's two creatures in this. Someone in the back that hasn't answered a question before. Go ahead. Okay, so there's the moth. Does anybody else see any other creatures? It's really hard to see. Go ahead. No? Do you see it? Yes. Yes, right there, there's an ant. And you know, I submitted this photo to the Sierra Club and they ran it online, and it wasn't until a gentleman who saw it online sent me a note about the ant that I saw the ant. And guys, so for my family, can you imagine what it was like for my family knowing that every day I was running out to make a crazy picture? This night, for example, what do you think they thought I was doing? Something kind of dangerous, don't you agree? But I never left my truck, which is relatively safe.
I love that.
Isn't that a cool discovery? And that just happened. My dog, Magnum, would go out with me to the tree, and I took a collapsible bowl of water. He drank the water, and he sat up with water dripping off his chin, and I saw that. Magnum, stay! And so guys, can you imagine the commitment my family had to make as a result of this? I couldn't take a family vacation. If I had a work assignment, I had to find time either in the morning or in the evening or during the day to run down and take a picture of the tree. Do you guys think you have it in you to make that sort of a commitment to any sort of project?
No.
But I was obviously heavily inspired by what I'd embraced and what I was experiencing. So in October of last year, I got a phone call from a gentleman named Jim Saida. And Jim Saida says to me, Mark, I'm Jim Saida with NBC News. I'm like, huh, wonder what he's calling me about. I thought he was probably calling me to take pictures of a presidential candidate. No, he was calling me because one of his colleagues follows me on Instagram and thought it would be a good story. And Jim says, her name is Meredith Burkett. And Jim says, Meredith fondly refers to you as the tree stalker. That's a pretty funny nickname. But as a result of her interest, NBC News did a story on my project. And what impact do you guys think that had on my Facebook followers? It went up by 1,000 overnight. This was on election day. Looking beyond the obvious, guys. Looking close at things. And I mentioned this earlier, what an incredible historical record of a drought year, don't you think? In December, guys, remember the crazy blizzard we had? And of course, I was out there making a picture that day too. You think about the winter we had. It was a rough winter for a guy to be shooting a picture day of a tree. Now you guys know how big an acorn shell is. Can you imagine how tiny that snowflake is? Isn't that cool? And another snowflake photo I shot using a magnifying glass. And guys, I've learned a lesson with your group. My apologies. I need to go through these faster.
Oh, no, that was fun.
So guys, the end result of my project is that I'm now working on publishing a book. And I'm communicating it and marketing it to people through the internet. How many books do you think I've sold already before I've even printed a book? Anybody? 800, yes.
Chris said 2. I thought I bought 4 already, Chris.
Sure, she bought 4.
I did.
And this is the last day, guys. For the very last day, I invited people to come out and be in the picture.
Okay, that's the same
290
part.
people. Where are you?
Here, also, this is the far right.
Here. Use my pointer.
Oh, I see it.
I see it.
Okay,
Top button.
see me? Mrs. Murphy's in the red to the far right, and
Right
I'm
here?
right in front of her. The lady with the white hat. Not the lady, nope, other, right there.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, right there. I'm standing by this lady with the white
Very
hat.
cool.
I won't be able to find myself. Yeah, it was cool.
And people were having a bird because I climbed the tree for that particular
I was
picture.
very nervous about it that day.
Lots
but
of
big
people were
boots
nervous.
on, and I was just like,
So guys, this project inspired lots of people. Lots of people. Do you think that there's any inspiration in it for you? Go ahead. Do you? How so? Well guys, I'm going to quick talk about some career possibilities that I think would be inspired by this. Imagine being a photographer, possibly an author, a farmer, a landscape architect, like Heidi Doyle. How about a field biologist? So guys, some things for you to think about, and it's what kind of drove me on this project. Take the ordinary and make it extraordinary. No matter what you're doing, think about that, guys. Try and exceed your potential. Always challenge yourself. You could have to imagine how much this project challenged me. And a friend of mine who was a Life magazine photographer shared this with me years ago, and it wasn't until he had passed away and his wife reminded me, but his word to me was, don't write or photograph the tree, write or photograph the forces that made the tree. Does that make sense to you guys? The story behind the story. So I'm going to pose a challenge to you, and hopefully your teachers can facilitate it. Make a photo journal. Do a photo a day for a week. Sit down beneath a tree every day for a week and make an observation and write down your observations. Possibly write a short story. Think about what you saw in my project. Write a short story possibly. But whatever you do, guys, make it rewarding and have fun. Thanks, guys. I don't know if we didn't have much time for you to answer questions, but I talked
we have
too long.
about 8 minutes.
Okay.
So,
Any questions?
Questions.
Go ahead.
Did you ever find out why the tree was hollow?
You know what? Scientifically, I don't know. The geologist said that it could be any number of things. He said it's not unusual for oak trees to be hollow. I will absolutely make sure I get a specific answer for that for the future. I apologize. Go ahead. It's a bur oak. A bur oak. They kind of called them the sentinel of the prairie because they were the oak species that survived the prairie fires. Go ahead.
Well, the project inspired me pretty good.
Pardon me? Oh, it inspired me pretty good. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Go ahead.
Where was this tree located?
It is located 2 miles from where I live, south of Platteville, right by the intersection of Airport Road and County Road D. Go ahead.
Does your book actually have 360?
Good question. Good question. I hope somebody would ask that. And guys, it's funny. Every day of my project was important to somebody. Maybe it was the day their child was born. Maybe it was their birthday. Maybe it was their anniversary. So when I started designing the book, 365 pages would be a huge book. But I decided I need to include every single picture because it was like a daily journal. It was my iPhone photo journal. So every picture will be in the book. maybe 70 or 80 of them will be full pages. The others are maybe 2 photos to a page, or maybe 3 photos to a page, or maybe 4 photos to a page. So it all varies, but every photo will be in the book. Go ahead.
Did you do like a special photo for like a holiday or something?
Pardon me?
Did you do a special photo for a holiday?
I did. You know, I probably should have included those. On the 4th of July, I used a flag. If you hold up a flag to the light, you can kind of see through it. You know what I mean? So I held up a flag and I shot through it with a silhouette of the tree. It was kind of neat. Then on Christmas Day, I took a wreath of Christmas lights, and I went on Christmas morning at 5 o'clock in the morning before sunrise, and I had a big battery that I could plug the lights into, and I laid down on the ground and I framed the tree through that wreath of lights. So those are the only 2 days that I really shot something that was theme-based. I apologize, I really probably should have included those. Go ahead.
Are you going to do something like this again?
You know, everybody asks me, what's your next project? And guys, probably the neatest thing about this one is it just happened naturally. I didn't force it on myself. It just occurred, and it resonated with people, and it was really interesting. I haven't had that epiphany yet. I hope I have one, because, you know, it's going to be a tough act to follow, though, I think. I don't know what you guys think. Go ahead.
Are you still taking pictures of that tree?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And the reason being, I want people to be engaged and continue to follow, because now I'm publishing a book, and ideally I would like to sell lots of books. I would like to, you know, have it be a successful project. So not every day, but every other day I'm trying to post a photo. I did not post one today. I will be shooting one this afternoon and posting it. So if you go to if you have a Facebook page, do a search for that tree and you'll find my page, and go ahead and follow it. I'm guessing we're just about out of time.
Yeah, I got like 5 minutes.
Okay, go ahead. Any other questions, guys? Go ahead.
Can you see it from the road?
Yes, you can. That's the crazy thing. I drove by it for 19, 20 years and never made a single picture of it. It's about 400 yards from the roadway. Go ahead.
The tree, it looks like it had somebody, but do you know, like, well, I don't understand this, but my grandma tree from that tree looks like pretty the same.
Oh, well, this species of tree, a bur oak, they have that real mushroomy form. I'm not surprised that your grandmother's oak tree looks very similar. Go ahead back there.
What's your favorite thing to take pictures of?
You know, I don't necessarily have a favorite thing. And you kind of saw that through the pictures that I took for the tree, I like to keep it fresh and come up with a new idea every day. That's kind of what keeps me excited. Go ahead.
What was your favorite picture of the
You know, oddly enough, I almost have to revert back to that very first photo I took on January 20th, because it was such a cool discovery. The circumstances, it just happened. And of all the pictures that I sell, because I sell them through my website, that is the absolute most popular photo with people that like my project too. Go ahead.
What's your favorite thing to take pictures with?
Yeah, you know, believe it or not, I've really come to enjoy shooting with my iPhone, and because I say this is a saying that I've heard before, but it is so true. The best camera is the one you have with you, and I always have my iPhone with me. Any more? Thanks, guys. You're a great audience. I'm sorry I talk so much.